The government that we installed in Iraq, the so-called democratic government, has been shooting down people in Iraq protesting for their rights. So we must not ever for a second let up in our solidarity with the Iraqi people and their struggle for independence and national freedom. So it's an honour to welcome our next speaker, no stranger to Stop the War platforms and a long-standing fighter for just those values, Sami Ramadani from Iraqi Democrats.
Thank you, Andrew, and thank you for reminding the audience about the cost of the war of aggression on Iraq, on the Iraqi people. In fact, just before I came to this meeting, I received an email from a very dear friend of mine. He said, I have to rush to Iraq because my youngest brother was killed yesterday when a combined force of Iraqi and American forces attacked a building where there was originally protesters against corruption and so on, and his brother was one of them. And suddenly there was an attack by so-called Al-Qaeda, and then the American forces and the Iraqi forces moved in and pulverized the building, killing more than 56 people. His brother included. There are one or two people here I see. Probably they don't know the news. He's also their friend. This obviously just adds to the picture of devastation in Iraq, where, as Andrew said, over 1 million got killed. The entire country is still bleeding very, very heavily, with the social fabric of Iraqi society torn apart by this brutal, ruthless occupation, which had to rely, because it was opposed by most Iraqis, it had to rely on the most sectarian, the most backward forces in Iraqi society. And they have, to a certain degree, succeeded in establishing a foothold in Iraq, but at the cost of destroying, or nearly destroying, a great civilization. I'm glad to report to this meeting as well, in a way, that the youngsters of Iraq, those who were only 10 and 12 years old when the invasion and occupation started, are now more or less leading the struggle against the occupation in its various manifestations, especially to do with torture, arrest of political prisoners, the lack of services, the destruction of the health service, the educational service, lack of electricity, all the essential services, over half the adult population being unemployed, and so forth. And we still have tens of thousands of US soldiers in occupation in Iraq, plus estimates vary from 50,000 to 100,000 various mercenaries contracted to the US government, to the Iraqi government, and so on, who are very important in privatizing the war in Iraq, in a sense, to appear as though the occupation forces have become much smaller in number. Also, there are plans afoot to prolong the occupation of Iraq beyond its stated deadline of December of this year. But the Iraqi people are despite their deep wounds and the enormous cost to life and infrastructure in Iraq, are still waging a really heroic struggle to maintain life and to oppose the occupation and struggle for freedom and democracy. I know tonight's meeting is about Libya, but what I described really does allude and does bring us to the question of imperialist intervention in the Middle East. At what cost? I know, and I really feel for the people of Benghazi and so on, just like I felt for the Kurdish people in Iraq and all the Iraqi people. We were torn apart. A lot of friendships were broken up. I know I lost many friends arguing with them about what is to be done. A lot of people who were genuine Democrats and socialists and so on were worrying, what shall we do? I mean, there is Saddam's brutal dictatorship and there is the US-led forces. Which side shall we fall on? And in the end, I think myself and many others active against Saddam's dictatorship decided to side with the Iraqi people. in their majority, and the Iraqi people in their majority were opposed to Saddam's regime, but they were also staunchly opposed to foreign interference, foreign intervention and aggression. And that was the decisive moment that, that decided for us what the right and correct stand should be. Because what appears to be a nice, easy solution, Tony Blair is often asked, do you regret the war in Iraq? And his standard reply is that I do not regret removing Saddam Hussein. See the play on word. Do you regret the war? No, I don't regret removing Saddam from power. As if a Chinook helicopter came, landed neatly in one of Saddam's palaces and whisked Saddam Hussein away, leaving Iraq beautifully intact and democracy established and so on. No, that is not how it is done. And this is not how it will be done in Libya either. They will not They will not whisk Gaddafi away and so on. They're already, as Kate mentioned, using this obscene depleted weapons munition. Tens of thousands of these were used across Iraq. And the cancer incidents are on the rise alarmingly in Iraq, and birth defects and so on. This is now being documented by doctors and health workers in Iraq. The long-term effect of this is yet to be totally to become apparent. And I looked at this Libya problem, and really I have to rely on my own judgment on this, and I do strongly sympathize with those who say, look, what about saving the civilians? And in the end, I have come to 7 reasons why we should oppose intervention in Libya. Number 1, and that was alluded to by Tony Benn, that these are the same colonial imperialist powers that after World War I divided the region and installed all these corrupt ruling families across the Middle East and North Africa. Every single one of these, and the most corrupt of them are the Saudi royal family or the Bahrain royal family. Just look at the map from the Atlantic Ocean to the Gulf. You will see this collection of the most corrupt, the most thuggish elements in society brought. Saudi Arabia was called Saudi Arabia because they installed the Saudi family. It's the one country in the world named after a family. These are our closest allies, they say. And look at their tanks crossing into Bahrain, killing civilians in Bahrain. This is where the US forces have their headquarters, the US Fifth Fleet, and one of the biggest military facilities in the world. I think it was Andrew who in a previous meeting said that the US forces could remove the King of Bahrain within 5 minutes if they want. But no, he's okay because he can kill and murder with impunity. Even doctors and nurses are getting arrested now in Bahrain. They have thrown the injured people from hospitals onto the streets in Bahrain, and they are starting to punish the nurses and doctors in Bahrain. These are not people, these are not civilians to be protected. We have to question these motives. The second reason why I think we should oppose it is that the Middle Eastern current history shows that all these modern dictatorships, so-called, are only capable of staying in power because they are receiving solid support from these same imperialist powers. They are armed to the teeth. The oil resources are taken away as cheap as possible, and most of the oil revenues go back in buying weapons to kill and murder their own peoples. It is not intervention that is required, it is that they should leave the area. they should stop backing these dictatorships. It's because it's when they stop backing them that the peoples of the region can easily overthrow them. Because the freedom fighters, the Democrats, the socialists, the trade unionists, the women organizers, it's these people who go to the prisons in these countries. It is the Democrats who are in the jails of the prisons of these dictatorships backed by the United States and the various imperialist powers. It's disgusting of them to say we are going into Libya to save Democrats and to save civilians. No, they are the enemies of the civilians and the enemies of Democrats across the region. I know time is limited and I'll rush through these reasons why we should all be aware of the dangers of imperialist intervention in the region. Gaddafi's replacement will be imperialist imposed. The opposition forces will also be pliant to the imperialists. They'll be armed by them. To stop the war, which first mentioned the fact that it will not stop at a no-fly zone. The no-fly zone they are imposing on Libya, we have to all remember that the invasion and occupation of Iraq started with a no-fly zone. It was started in 1991 with a no-fly zone in the south, later on extended to Kurdistan. These are stages of trying to soften up countries for invasion and direct occupation because imperialism is in crisis, because they are facing severe economic problems, because war is endemic within this monopoly capitalist system. We have to understand. We have to understand this is not coincidental that they jump at every possibility where there is war. You tell them, where is the money for hospitals, for schools? They say, we don't have the money. But when there is a war, suddenly billions of pounds appear from everywhere. You never see such excited politicians like Cameron and before him Tony Blair at the sight of releasing these devastating missiles at people. Look at Afghanistan. How many missiles have they used? It was one Arab journalist who said if you go and visit the entire country of Afghanistan, you won't find a $1 million building in poor Afghanistan. But each one of these Tomahawk missiles costs $1 million. It's absolutely obscene the way this system thrives on war, because the manufacture of weapons, the weapons industry, the technology linked to the weapons industry is at the heart of this capitalist system. Selling of arms is the second biggest trade in the world. Manufacturing these arms and waging wars is at the heart of these systems. That's why the peace movement is so important. That's why we must continue the struggle so that humanity can live in peace without these avaricious and ruthless systems killing so many people across the world. I will finish on this. I'm not going to go through the entire list of why we should oppose this, but probably you got the gist of what I'm talking about. This intervention poses a great threat to the entire Arab revolutions. Don't believe otherwise. They are sending a message to every Arab ruler that if you are with us, you'll be okay. Either we protect you from your own people, or we will come down and protect your state, just like they are trying to do in other parts of the Arab world. And they are endangering particularly the Egyptian and Tunisian revolutions, because these are unfinished business, unfinished revolutions. Libya borders both. And their presence in Libya poses a grave threat to these revolutions. And they pose a threat to the democratic movements across the Arab world. And I think it is our duty to stand by the peoples of the region until they achieve true democracy and true freedom, free from this imperialist invasions and interference. Thank you. Thank you.